My brother looked across the table at me and said it like it was the funniest thing he had ever thought of. 30 and still single. He said it with a grin. Like I was a punchline he had been saving all evening. And my father, my own father, laughed. Not a polite laugh. A real one. I looked at them both. I looked at the glass in my hand. I put it down slowly on the table. And then I said something that made the laughter stop so completely it felt like the air had been pulled out of the room. Welcome to Haely Stories. This is the place where you will find real and emotional women's stories that will touch your heart, make you feel seen, and remind you that you are never alone in what you are going through. If that is something you need in your life, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a single story. Now let me tell you about the family dinner where I finally said the thing I had been swallowing for years, and why I do not regret a single word of it. My name is Gia Luss and I am 30 years old. And yes, I am single. I have been single for 2 years. I live alone in an apartment I chose carefully and furnished exactly the way I wanted and come home to every evening with a feeling that I can only describe as relief. I have a career I worked hard for, friends I genuinely love, a life that is full and interesting and entirely mine. I want to be clear about something before I tell you the rest of this story. I am not telling you any of this to defend myself. I do not owe anyone a defense of my relationship status. I am telling you because I think it matters that you understand who I was walking into that family dinner, not a woman who was struggling with being single, not a woman who was secretly desperate for someone to rescue her from her own life, but a woman who was, on most days, genuinely content. The problem was not my singleness. The problem was my family's inability to leave it alone. My brother's name is Marco. He is 33 years old, married, and has spent the better part of the last 2 years treating my single status as a topic that is always available for comment. Not cruelly, he would say if you asked him. Just joking around. Just being a brother. The way brothers are. What Marco does not seem to understand is that there is a difference between a joke that lands between equals and a joke that only works because one person is made to feel less than. His jokes about my singleness were always the second kind. And I had been swallowing them for 2 years because I did not want to make things difficult at family gatherings and because I kept telling myself it was harmless. It was not harmless. It just had not reached its limit yet. That dinner was where it reached its limit. It was a Saturday evening at my parents' house. My parents host dinner once a month. A tradition that has existed for as long as I can remember and that I have always attended because I love my family and because the food is genuinely excellent and because the good parts of those evenings are worth the navigation required to get through them. There were 8 of us at the table. My parents. Marco and his wife Daniela. My aunt and her husband. And me. The evening started well. The food was good. Conversations moved around the table the way they do in families where people have known each other long enough to be comfortable, overlapping and loud and warm in patches and pointed in others. I was having a genuinely pleasant time. I was talking to Daniela about something she was working on. I had a glass of wine in my hand. I was relaxed. And then Marco said it, was talking to my father about something. I had not been fully following the conversation, and then he gestured toward me with his fork and said, "Of course Gia wouldn't know about that. She's still living the single life. 30 and still single." He grinned. The grin of someone who thought he had said something clever. My father laughed. Not a polite acknowledgement. Not a distracted half-smile. A genuine laugh. The kind that says yes, yes, that's funny, that landed across the table and filled the space where the rest of the conversation had been. I looked at Marco. I looked at my father. I looked at the glass in my hand. I put it down, the table had not gone fully quiet yet. People were still doing the thing they do when a comment lands, redistributing their attention, half laughing, moving on. My mother was looking at her plate. Daniela was looking at Marco with an expression I filed away for later. My aunt was refilling her water glass. I waited until there was just enough of a pause for what I was about to say to be heard by everyone. Then I said, "Marco, can I ask you something?" He looked at me with the mild surprise of someone who expected me to either laugh along or go quiet the way I usually did. I said, "What exactly is the joke? Is it that I am 30? Because I did not know that was funny. Is it that I am single? Because I also did not know that was something to laugh at. Or is it just that when you put those two things together about your sister it becomes material?" The table was quiet now. Fully quiet. Marco said, "Gia, I was just joking around." I said, "I know you were. You have been joking around about this for 2 years. Every dinner. Every family gathering. Still single, Gia? No luck yet, Gia?" It is the same joke every time and I have laughed at it or ignored it or changed the subject because I did not want to make things awkward. But tonight Dad laughed too, and I think that is the part that made me want to stop letting it go. I looked at my father. I said, "Dad, I am not sure what you found funny just now. But I want you to understand something. I am 30 years old. I have a career I am proud of. I have a life that I actually like. The fact that I am not married is not a failure and it is not a joke, and I would really appreciate it if the people at this table stopped treating it like it was both of those things simultaneously." Nobody said anything for a moment. The particular silence of a family dinner table after someone has said the true thing is unlike other silences. It has a texture to it. A weight. Everyone in the room processing at slightly different speeds, calibrating their responses, deciding what to do with what they have just heard. My mother was the first to speak. She said, quietly, "Gia is right." Just that. Gia is right. 3 words that I had not expected from her, and that landed with more weight than I can easily explain. Marco looked at his plate. He had the expression of someone who has been caught doing something he had not thought of as wrong until someone named it clearly in front of people. My father said, "Gia, I was not trying to." I said, "I know, Dad. I know you were not trying to hurt me. But you laughed. And when you laughed it confirmed everything Marco was implying, that there is something wrong with where I am in my life. And there is not. There is nothing wrong with it. I just needed you both to hear me say that." My aunt said, very practically, "Shall we have more bread?" and the dinner continued. Not the same as before, something had shifted in the air of that room, but it continued. People talked. Food was eaten. The evening moved forward with the slightly careful quality of people who are navigating around something that was just said and are still working out where to put it. Marco caught me in the kitchen after dinner. I was helping clear plates, a habit, something I always did at my parents' house, and he came in and stood for a moment with his hands in his pockets in the way he does when he is uncomfortable and does not know how to start. I did not make it easier for him. I kept clearing plates. He said, "I did not realize it bothered you that much." I put a plate down and turned around. I said, "Marco, how could it not bother me? You make the same comment every time I see you. You frame my life as though it is a problem waiting to be solved. In front of our family. In front of people I love. How exactly did you think it was landing?" He said, "I thought you found it funny." I said, "I found it easier to pretend I found it funny than to have this conversation every time. That is not the same thing." He was quiet. I said, "I am not angry with you. I want you to know that. But I needed to stop letting it go because every time I let it go you had no reason to stop doing it. You thought it was fine because I never said it was not. He said, it was not fine. I can see that now. I said, good. He said, I am sorry, Gia. I looked at my brother, my annoying, well-meaning, fundamentally decent brother who had been making the same thoughtless joke for 2 years without understanding what it cost, and I said, I know you are. Let's not do this again. He said, we will not. My father called me the next morning. He is not a man who calls the morning after. He is not, generally speaking, a man who makes calls that require vulnerability. He calls on birthdays and to pass along practical information and on Sunday evenings when the week is wrapping up. A Sunday morning call with nothing specific to convey was enough to tell me that what I had said the night before had sat with him. I answered. He said, I have been thinking about last night. I said, okay. He said, I should not have laughed. I said, no. You should not have. He said, I did not think about what it meant when I laughed. It was a reflex. Marco made a comment and I responded and I did not stop to think about what it felt like from where you were sitting. I said, that is the thing, Dad. You never have to think about it from where I am sitting unless I make you. And I have been not making you for 2 years. He said, I know that now. I said, I am not looking for an apology about the whole 2 years. I just needed you to understand that your laugh last night meant something. It told me that you agreed with the implication. That there is something lacking in my life that should be fixed. And I needed you to know that I do not see it that way. He was quiet for a moment, then he said, I do not see it that way either. I think I just did not think. And that is its own kind of problem, isn't it? I said, yes. It is. He said, you have built something good, Gia. Your mother and I both know that. I should have said so a long time ago instead of laughing at the wrong moments. I said, yes. You should have. But I said it gently. Because he had called. Because he was trying. And because trying, however imperfect, is something, Daniela, Marco's wife, texted me the next afternoon. She said she had wanted to say something at the table and had not found the moment, and she was glad I had said what I said. She said she had been watching Marco make those comments for 2 years and had told him privately that she did not think it was funny and that he needed to stop. She said she was sorry she had not been louder about it in the moment. I wrote back and said she did not need to apologize. That it was not her responsibility to correct her husband's behavior toward his sister in public. That I was glad she had said something to him privately even if it had taken 2 years to land. She said, you handled it so well last night. I kept thinking, how is she so calm? I said, I was not calm on the inside. I was furious. But I have learned that furious and calm can exist at the same time if you need them to. She sent back a single word, powerful. I saved that text. Not because I needed the validation, though I will not pretend it did not feel good to receive it. Because sometimes it helps to have something to look at when the version of events you remember clearly starts to feel uncertain. When you start to wonder if you overreacted. If you said too much. If you should have just laughed and moved on. I did not overreact. I said the true thing at the right moment and I stood behind it. That is not overreacting. That is just being honest about what you deserve. The following month's dinner was different. Not dramatically different. Not the kind of different that announces itself. Just different in the way that rooms are different after a window has been opened. A bit more air. A bit more space. Marco did not make any comments about my relationship status. Not one. The subject did not come up at all, which felt, after 2 years of it coming up at every gathering, like its own kind of statement. My father asked about my work. Genuinely asked, not the polite half-attention he sometimes brought to questions about my career, but actual curiosity, actual follow-up questions, actual interest in what I was doing and how it was going, and why Mother told a story about something that had happened to her that week that she had apparently told Marco but not me, and she said, "I keep forgetting to tell you things, Gia, and that needs to change." It was a small dinner. An ordinary one in most ways. But I drove home from it feeling something I had not felt after a family dinner in a long time. I felt like myself. Not a version of myself that had been quietly managing and accommodating and swallowing things and calling it peace. Actually myself. The woman who had put her glass down and said the true thing and had not apologized for it. That feeling was worth 2 years of the alternative. Want to tell you something about being 30 that nobody told me before I got here. 30 is not what I expected. Not because it is worse than I expected, it is actually better in most ways. But because the things I was told to expect, the things my family seemed to believe were inevitable markers of what 30 was supposed to look like, have not all arrived, and I have found, to my genuine surprise, that I do not miss them. I was supposed to be settled by 30. I was supposed to have ticked certain boxes. The relationship. The shared home. The particular shape of a life that declares itself finished in recognizable ways. I have not ticked those boxes. And what I have found, in the space where those boxes were supposed to be, is something else. A kind of freedom that I did not expect to value as much as I do. A relationship with myself that I did not expect to find interesting. A life that is genuinely mine in a way that I think would not be possible if I had spent my 20s making myself smaller to fit someone else's shape. I'm not saying this to make a case against relationships or marriage or commitment. Those things are real and valuable, and I am not opposed to them. I am saying this to make a case for choosing your own timeline. For refusing to let other people's anxiety about your choices become your own anxiety. My brother was not worried about me. He was uncomfortable with a choice that did not look like his own. My father was not laughing at me. He was defaulting to a reflex that he had never examined. Neither of them had sat with what they were actually saying and what it meant. I made them sit with it. And it changed something. I have thought a lot about why it took me 2 years to say what I said at that dinner table. The honest answer is that I was afraid of what it would cost me. Not afraid that they would be cruel in response, I knew they would not be. Afraid of the discomfort. Afraid of the silence. Afraid of being seen as someone who could not take a joke, who was sensitive, who made things difficult. That fear, the fear of being seen as difficult, is one I think a lot of women carry. It is very specifically feminine in its shape. Men do not generally worry about being seen as difficult when they say that something bothered them. Women are taught from very early that their discomfort is something to manage privately, something to smooth over quickly, something not to burden other people with. I had been managing my discomfort privately for 2 years. The night I put my glass down, I stopped. Not because I stopped caring what people thought. I still care what people think, I am human. But because I cared more about what I thought. About the version of myself I wanted to be. About whether the woman I was at that table, the one who smiled and changed the subject and called it grace, was actually the woman I wanted to keep being. She was not the woman I wanted to be. Put her glass down. So I did. I am 30 years old and I am single and I am the happiest I have been in a long time. I want to tell you what I know now that I did not know 2 years ago. Your life does not need to look like anyone else's life to be a good life. The timeline that other people carry in their heads for you, the ages by which certain things should happen, the boxes that should be ticked, the shapes that a life should take, those timelines are theirs. They are not yours. You are not obligated to live inside someone else's idea of what you should be. I also know that saying the true thing does not destroy relationships. It changes them. It shifts them toward honesty. The month after that dinner was the best family gathering I had attended in 2 years, not because nothing had happened, but because something had been said that needed to be said, and the space it left behind was cleaner than the space before it. And I know that the moment of putting your glass down, whatever that looks like for you, the moment of deciding you are done swallowing something and choosing to say the true thing instead, that moment is available to you. It is always available. It does not require a special occasion or perfect timing or the right words prepared in advance. It just requires you to decide that what you feel is worth saying. I decided. My name is Gia. I am 30 years old. My brother called me 30 and still single, and my father laughed. I put my glass down. And I said something they will never forget. That is my story. He said it like it was the punchline of a joke. My father laughed like it was. I put my glass down and said the thing that turned the punchline around. Not because I was angry. Because I finally decided I was worth saying it for. Thank you for listening. This is Haely Stories. We will see you in the next one.